Hey, welcome to the Fashionably podcast. I'm so excited and thankful that you have joined me here again. Sorry, I'm going to kind of resituate. I thought I was going to lean back and then I kind of caught a glimpse over there and I was like, oh, never mind. We're going to readjust ourselves here. I hope that you're having a great week, day, evening, whenever it is that you are watching this. Last week we celebrated the 1 year mark of this podcast. And so this is officially the start of year 2, right? So that's what we're going to count it as at least. And I am excited about what I am going to be talking about tonight. And I kind of can't believe that it's taken me a whole year to realize that I have never talked about this on the podcast, because one of my favorite characters, if you will, people in the Bible, before there was Esther and Ruth, there was Joshua. So for me, I love Joshua. I love the story that Joshua carries throughout the Bible, how he has this great amount of faith and he does these great and mighty things. And so if you aren't aware of who Joshua is, just to kind of give some backstory, he was basically Moses' apprentice. So if you don't know who Moses is, well, you've probably at least seen Moses, the Ten Commandments, Moses, he parts the Red Sea. Okay, that's the guy. So Joshua is like his right-hand man. And where I really started to enjoy Joshua was in Exodus 33, verse 11. This is where I was kind of like, okay, I really like this guy. It says, "Inside the tent of meeting, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Afterwards, Moses would return to the camp, but the young man who assisted him, Joshua, son of Nun, would remain behind in the tent of meeting." So the way that it was set up at this time is that, God would meet with Moses and Moses would tell the people. So like not even Joshua was meeting with God the way that Moses was. So he would encounter God through Moses by being at the tent. And I think in one verse or one translation, it was like he would lay by the tent. And so I love that because I was talking with a group of people and we were kind of ranking like what our favorite, like what's your favorite thing? You like worship, prayer, reading the Bible. I like worship. That's like my favorite. And so when I kind of envision this in my head, this may not at all be how it kind of played out, but the way that I envision it is, that's like, he's meeting with Moses, but that was like a form of worship and Joshua's just kind of like there. And so I really liked that. And again, I just kind of caught a glimpse. I totally forgot. I know you all are probably not paying attention to me because you're trying to figure out what my shirt says. It says, "I love sports." And I know it's probably supposed to be one of those or sweatshirts for like girls that's like super sarcastic, like "I love sports, so I'm just here for the food." But I saw it and I was like, you know me, I actually love sports. So I know you all are probably like, what is that? It's our heart. That's what it says. Okay, anyway, back to Joshua. So we're going to pick up the story of Joshua. That's who he is. He was, Moses' assistant. So when Moses dies at the beginning of Joshua, very easy, quick transition. He says, "My servant Moses is dead." Now Joshua. And so he takes up this. Sorry, I'm trying to find the first page. I'm reading out of the Passion Translation. I've really enjoyed that. When I got my Bible, didn't have this in here. So there are some new ones. This one has Joshua, Judges, and Ruth, which, I love. So I got those two. But there's some other ones. Genesis is also really good. Isaiah they have. So just a side note. But so that's who Joshua is. It says he was Moses' faithful assistant. And he's telling him, now it's time to get up, prepare to cross the Jordan River. You and all the people, you're going to lead them into the promised land. So they've been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And now it's time for them to actually go to the place that they were supposed to go all along. And so that was chapter 1. They actually don't cross over until chapter, where is it? 4, 5. But we're going to pick up in chapter 6 because we're going to talk about Jericho. So there was a sermon I heard many years ago, and it was called Don't Stop on 6. And it was the story of this chapter. And I wrote that here. I write it in every Bible that I have, Don't Stop on 6. And that's kind of what we're going to look at, because why don't you want to stop at 6? Because the walls fall at 7. And so if you don't know, just kind of follow along with us here. I'm going to read quite a bit here, but just to kind of give us some good context, and then we're going to go back and talk about it. So it says, now the gates of Jericho were bolted and barred because of the Israelites. No one could get in or out. Yahweh commanded Joshua, see, I have given Jericho, its king, and mighty warriors into your hands. March around the city with all of your men of war once a day for 6 days. Have 7 priests carrying shofars in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the shofars. When you hear the blare, have all of the people shout with a mighty shout of joy. Then the walls of the city will collapse before your eyes, and your whole army must charge straight in. So Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests and instructed them, take up the ark of the covenant, and have 7 priests carrying 7 shofars in front of the ark of Yahweh. And to the people he said, forward, march around the city, set an advance guard of armed men to march ahead of the ark of Yahweh. At Joshua's order, the 7 priests carrying 7 shofars advanced before Yahweh. The ark of the covenant of Yahweh followed them as they made long blasts on their shofars. The advanced guard marched in front of the priests who were blowing. The rear guard marched behind the ark, and the shofars blared the whole time. Now Joshua had commanded the rest of the people, do not shout, remain silent, don't make a sound until the moment I command you to shout. Then lift up a shout with all your might. So the ark of Yahweh circled the city once. Then they all came back to the camp in Gilgal and spent the night. Joshua rose bright and early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of Yahweh. The armed men and 7 priests carrying 7 shofars marched in front of the ark, blowing them, and the rear guard followed, and the trumpets kept sounding. And on the 2nd day, they circled the city one time and returned to camp, and repeated this pattern for 6 days. Then on the 7th day, everyone rose at daybreak. They marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. After their 7th time around, when the priests were about to blow the shofars, Joshua commanded the people, shout a shout of joy. Yahweh has given to you the city. Jericho and everything in it are to be a devoted offering to Yahweh. And then we're going to jump to 20 and 21. It says, the people were ready to shout with a great shout when they had heard the shofars. As soon as they heard the blast, they raised a massive shout of jubilee like a thunderclap. And all at once, the thick walls of Jericho collapsed. Everyone rushed straight ahead and captured the city. So I want to talk about this and kind of look at it. It's very interesting. I think every time I read it, I pick up something new about this story, and just kind of like the interesting and the little details within the story. But kind of as we think about this, I want you to think about the things. Is there something or things that you have in your life where you feel like there are walls that are in the way for you getting your breakthrough? For the thing that you want that's on the other side? And is it that you have stopped short, that you stopped at 6 and you didn't go the 7th lap, and it's caused you to settle in a place that you were never created to be? And so think about those kind of as we talk through this really briefly here for the next few minutes. So I don't know about you, but when I listen to this, it just really doesn't make sense. Like, the plan that God gave Joshua, if I was Joshua, I would have been like writing it down and be like, okay, so like, when you want us to fight, where are the scalpels, the chisels? Did you not create something for us to like blow this up? Like, it's a wall here. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to get this to come down? And Joshua writes it down. It's like, okay, Yes, Lord. And it's just so funny, but because God didn't give the plan. Well, I'm getting ahead of stuff. Let's go back to verse 1, because it says that the gates of Jericho were bolted and barred because of the Israelites. No one could get in and out. Well, the walls were there and it was bolted shut, so the Israelites couldn't get in, not because they weren't supposed to get in, but because the people who were inside were afraid of them, because they knew that God had already given them the promise. The people inside on the other side were afraid and made it look so terrifying, like they couldn't get what they already supposed to have, because they knew more than the Israelites that it was the Israelites' land. And so thinking about that for us is, a lot of the times the devil will make that wall think that there's so much there that you're not supposed to have what's on the other side. But that's all an illusion, because God has already given you that promise. So what's for you is for you. And then this is what I was going to say a second ago, where it says Yahweh commanded Joshua. God gave the full plan to Joshua. But when Joshua gives the plan to the people, he doesn't tell them how long they have to march, which isn't that what God does to us? He doesn't tell Joshua like everything that's going to happen. But a lot of the times when God gives us a plan, he gives us a piece. We've talked about that. Like, you get a piece of the puzzle. Say yes to a podcast. Okay, great. I'm doing it. Now what? Like, I don't know. He tells them, you're going to go march around a city. Okay, great. And the people, again, they just don't question. They just act in obedience. And so then, through verses 6 through 15, it talks about like they had just great faith in Joshua. They knew who Joshua was. They knew that he was God's chosen one, that he was their voice, and they, followed. Now we don't have to have that middleman. So like how we've been talking here. So like, Moses was the middleman to Joshua at that time. And then Joshua is the middleman to the Israelites. But that's why Jesus came. It was to take away the middleman, because we have straight access into him. And so that's the one thing that is a little different in this story, that we don't have that kind of like that in between. But what we do have sometimes is maybe there's not a person in between, but there's questions in between. A lot of the times that we have a lot of questions, God gives us the word, God tells you to do this, and it doesn't sound like, march, blow the horns, take out the Ark of the Covenant. You're going to go one lap for one day, and then you're going to go back to camp. And it's just so funny, because I can only imagine, like, after that happened, like the rumors that are kind of got to be flying around, like as they sit around, like I'm just imagining they had campfires. I don't know. But I've got to imagine, like, they had to eat, they had to stay warm, right? So, you've marched around the city one time, you came back, and, because it didn't say everybody marched. There was only a certain group of people that were marching. Oh, so how did it go today? Well, we walked a lap, like, okay, so that's all you did? Yep, that was it. We took a lap around the city. And then they came back the next day. Well, we did too today. Like this carries on for 6 days. Can you imagine, like, you're starting to lose like faith, like, okay, is this really who God chose for us? Is this really what we're supposed to be doing? This makes no sense. Isn't that like what happens to us when we don't get the things that we want and the timing that we want with God? All of those questions. And it's just the lies from the enemy that start to come in, and we try to think, well, was that really God? Is that right? Are we hearing it right? But then on the 7th day, and that's what I love, is because don't stop on 6, because a lot of the times in our life, what we can't see is what God does see, is that there's a crack coming. It's coming from the inside out, and he's already making a way through, and we just don't see it. And a lot of the times we just stop short. But when you don't stop short, then you get to see that whole wall fall. And so on day 7, they're rewarded. And what gave them their promise, what gave them what God had always told them that they could have, was their praise and worship and their obedience. They won the war with worship and faith and obedience. And that's what it takes for us to win a lot of those battles that we face in life. That God will give you a word. He will give you maybe it's just to stand still sometimes, or maybe it is to fight, or he's always there with us, speaking to us, and we have to have the faith to know and to act and to move on in that way. I did want to read, so it says, as soon as they, back, in 20 and 21, they heard the blast of the shofars, they raised a massive shout of jubilee, like a thunderclap. And all at once, the thick walls, I'm thinking of another story, thick walls of Jericho collapsed. Everyone rushed straight in and captured the city. They utterly destroyed all that was in Jericho, men and women, young and old, livestock and donkeys. Everything was destroyed with a sword, because that was what God had promised him. But in kind of going back to, there was a footnote. That's what I love about the Passion Translation. I don't know if you have it, if you've ever seen it or not, but they have a lot of footnotes in them that give a context, which we know that's something I really enjoy. So the footnote on that one with 20, it says that it's talking about the number 7. And so there are number of 7s in this chapter. There were 7 priests, 7 shofars, 7 days circling the city. 7 times the city was to be encompassed on the 7th day. 7 represents completion, fullness, and perfection. And so God was letting him know that he was doing it fully, completely, and in his perfect way. And that's what he wants to do for us, that he has a perfect way, a perfect plan. And we just have to obey and have faith and worship him through those times of uncertainty to get to what we want. The one part that I kind of skipped over where I jumped down is where it does talk about Rahab. And if you don't know the full story with Rahab, we see her when Joshua sends, before they go, he sends some spies over, and she welcomes the spies into the city and kind of lets them come in and sneak in and look around. And, they do that for a promise to keeping her safe. And in this, it says that, again, when Joshua gave the word, in the end, it says to spare Rahab, the prostitute, and everyone in her house, because she hid our spies. And so just to kind of think about this too, as her obedience saved not only her life, but it saved her entire family. So what is there that God is asking you to have faith for you to believe in, that might not just be affecting you, but could affect your whole family? And so this, I love this story because it teaches us, again, not to settle, not to stop short of the promises of God. That if you keep going, that there could be a crack, there could be something coming very quickly, very swiftly that you don't see coming. That breakthrough is there for you. You just have to push through the lies and the worries and the fears and know that God is there with you. Don't stop on 6 because the walls do fall at 7. So I hope that this encouraged you. Again, it's going to be our first story for the new year. And I forgot at the last episode, as always, we need to give a big thank you to BGTV Studios for being the host of this podcast. We are so thankful for them, because without that always gentle push and nudge, it keeps me accountable and to help be obedient to God and to not stop on 6. So I hope that I can be that push for you. So we will all see those walls fall. Have a great week, and I will see you again next time at Love Fashionably.